The difference between this side of the House, which is aspirational, has got a view for New Zealand, and those people over there, is that they are stuck in the fine print of detail. They're stuck in the nanny state, and that chair of our committee has been sitting there grasping every little detail and looking at it in part one of the bill and saying, look, we've got to do this and we've got to do that, we've got to do the next thing. They're losing sight of the fact that part one of this bill is going to regulate the greatest event that has ever occurred in New Zealand's history. This is going to set up a global brand for New Zealand's export markets. It's going to set up a vision for the world, for all of us. And that chair of the committee is sitting down, locked in Clause B, Part 5C, dealing in detail over fire alarms and other total irrelevancies. Absolute irrelevancy. What you've got to do is you've got to look out there on the horizon and say, what in part one of this bill is going to...
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Chairman, I'm not sure if you're entirely focused, but the member was giving you some advice as to what you should be doing, and I think you were slightly distracted at the time, and I'm sure that if you weren't, you would have brought him back to at least referring to members of the Labour opposition rather than the chair.
Can I say to the member would be wrong to assume that the chair is distracted or make any assumptions about the chair. The chair can be focused on many things. Let me tell you, I listen attentively. And I heard the member refer to you. I wasn't particularly taken or offended by it. I thought the member was expressing some views with passion and force, and I thought, well, this is not bad. We've got some energy going. I invite the member to continue. He has 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. One of the things, Mr Chair, that has been bothering me for some time, and I've looked around this floor to see if we've got a grief counsellor in the House, because what we're dealing with here is one of our number is totally aggrieved that they're not going to be the minister for the Rugby World Cup. And they can't get over it. No, he can't get over it, and now I'm not allowed to say he's left the chamber. Mr Chair,
certainly not.
No, I didn't say, Mr Chair. What I'm really concerned about is, in the second reading, Trevor Mallard raised the possibility of a conscience vote on aspects of the Rugby World Cup legislation relating to gambling and liquor legislation, as he felt there were inconsistencies in the arrangements between liquor and gaming areas. Now, I think it's important to note that National is not changing the intent of all criteria for the Sale of Liquor Act. We're simply creating a faster process for approvals because we have a vision to move this country forward. And given the volume and the time constraints for this huge event that are presented by the resource consent process and other processes we have in this country, we have got to find a way of speeding up the process and of turning on a world-class event. And I'm deeply sorry for the member of this chamber who is desperate to somehow return to the status of boss of the Rugby World Cup. Well, news for him, he isn't going to get there. And Part 1 can never ever provide for that member to get back there. Now, this is not inconsistent. The legislation is not inconsistent with the approach that's been taken to liquor, because it's not necessary for the public's enjoyment of the Rugby World Cup to allow access to gambling. And this is what our committee decided during its deliberations, that people didn't need access to gambling machines while they were watching the Rugby World Cup on television. Mr Chair, the restriction of the operation of cruise ship casinos while in New Zealand waters will be no different to the restrictions that apply to other forms of accommodation which will host visitors for the Rugby World Cup. There is a prohibition on new casino licences in the Gambling Act of 2003, and the bill does not override that. I'd just like to very briefly, because I've probably only got another minute, Mr Chair, to come back to this question that is concerning the minister who would have loved to be the minister for this relationship, the member who would love to have been the minister for this event, and that is to say to them, that we need to have a process that will most likely never ever be used. But if this huge event for New Zealand, which is going to market New Zealand to the world, if there are problems that we've got to unblock, problems of the detail that the Chair has been outlining, we need a mechanism in place to deal with that and to address it quickly. It will not be a one-man band making this decision. It will be a designated minister who, in consultation with another designated minister and a responsible minister, for example, the Minister of Police, if it was a policing issue, would get consultation, and probably would get consultation as well with Cabinet. This legislation will not be used lightly. It is not designed to drive a bulldozer through the structure of our legislation and laws in New Zealand, but this country must turn on a world-class event, and this legislation has been set up to do exactly that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call